I literally saw a video like that, and it was a language learning video for Chinese immigrants, and it was just absolutely amazing because it was so shockingly accurate of a portrait of a certain time and place that it arrested me. And I just had to sit there and look at it. I tried to buy that video actually, but they wouldn't sell it to me. They tried to sell me like a whole box set of learning English tapes, but it was like hundreds of dollars and it was on VHS, and I just wanted that one tape. And it was just absolutely amazing to hear this person, embody a time and place through this very idiosyncratic language. And I thought, yeah, okay, so what she was doing is she was instructing people how to get haircuts, right? Like how to go out, so a Chinese immigrant could come into California, buy that tape, and then go to the barbershop and say, I want this type of haircut. This is how please cut my hair like this. But the thing is that, haircuts obviously change over time, and this video is really outdated, so she was actually asking people to learn how to order a mullet haircut. It was so amazing that what I did is nothing. It just reflected it, But to be in that context where you can look at your own culture and say, Jesus, this is what it means to be an American right now. I thought that was pretty amazing, and that video did it better than I could do it. And I just tried to recreate it, and I think that, now you place it in this area where you can go and see it, and then you can look at it and say, well, what is it about learning language? And my family is. You saw my mom's Chinese, my dad, a white guy, and my family's Russian too and stuff. So I grew up studying all sorts of languages, and I watched Muzzy videos when I was a little kid, and I watched all these language learning videos. And so there's always been this, and a lot of my languages that I speak are very conversational level. So I like basketball too. It's just I can go to Russia and order basic food and talk to people, but I'm really not discussing things of deep nature. But it's really fun just to have those games that we play with language. So I kind of just made this piece to access a very small group. And I'm going to tell you straight up, it is not a large population I'm going for to understand this piece. It's very niche in the sense that you kind of got to understand and be part of the culture of America that grew up in this bilingual or multilingual world. And I showed this to a lot of people who are some people are totally about it, I totally get what you're saying. My friend from Taiwan is all about it. He's this is exactly right. And then other people are just I don't get it, But that's the point. It's kind of just it's making, you just kind of look at, how you learn and what the structure of our communications. Does that answer? And it is amusing, It's kind of just lighthearted in the sense that those videos are not trying to be profound, but they're pretty entertaining. But you pass them off because they're for kids, but they're still out there, I think. If anybody has any questions, just shout them out.
Right, thanks. So let me head out and do the talk show thing. Questions, anybody? Yes.
I was just wondering if Justin could talk a little bit more about the videos and how he worked with the CCDC to develop some of the videos, because they weren't all for amusement per se, and we have somebody who starred in the video here.
Right. Actually, I think you said that. Maybe it's in the restroom. Okay, so the videos are still... Okay, my original idea when Kevin approached me, or we discussed this, was to create a space in Chinatown where you actually could go and practice this. And it would be... these videos that you see in the store windows are not high quality. They're pretty basic. You have a camera and a desk and a backdrop. And then you sit there and you have a script, and the person reads the script and you learn the language like that. So I was thinking, how great would it be if we could have a community-based opportunity to explore words that people want to know. And this would be a space that you could open up to the public and say, okay, you know what, just come and just play with language. If you want to learn English, we can help you. We'll have bilingual people there. And it'd be directly for, extending the video into a real life context. Because you need life experience in language. So this a lot of my work is site-specific and context-specific. So that's how it was site-specific and context-specific, is that it really looked at Chinatown itself and who lives here. There's a lot of people who only speak one language or want to speak English, So I wanted that, but then we couldn't get a space that would allow us access every day where we could go in there and hang out there and practice and make these videos with the community at large. So the CCDC then said that they have a group that would be willing to help. So I went and met with them just a couple times just to access them and see what they needed. They said the biggest thing that they don't have was fire safety videos or fire safety information. The CCDC gave me some pamphlets, and that language was pretty fun too. It was like, obviously if you're saying to somebody stop, drop, and roll, it's probably a pretty bad situation because they're on fire. But I just think poetically, how terse that language is pretty interesting. So linguistically, that is. Sentences made up of one word, I guess. Regardless, then we had this access, this dialogue with the group about what they needed to learn, what they wanted to learn, and I just tried to help them. And then we wanted to have the city councilman. He was going to be in the video. What was his name? David Chu, right? I wanted David Chu to do all these ridiculous things. He said he wouldn't do anything, which I understand. You want to keep your image clean. However, it would have been really great. And then I just wanted him to say, "I support you." And then he wouldn't say that. He would only say, "I support this message," which was, so I cut him out. But I appreciated it. He wanted to. He just couldn't bend to this idea that somebody wanted to use media in a way that didn't fit into his boxes of how to use media, which I think is at the heart of the art, is to pose an idea that is contrary and not necessarily, antagonistic to, but an alternative viewpoint that has possibility.
Thanks. So Ken, hello there. Thanks for patiently waiting. And my first question for you. So Ken does the basketball issue display. I'm sure you've done other art as well. But my question for you: Are you a basketball player? Does this come out of your anything like that?
I grew up in LA, big Lakers fan. The only thing my town can talk about is fighting. So basketball is integral to my brain. I'm a horrible fan.
So how does this? Is there some wish fulfillment? Have you always wanted to be one of those basketball stars?
I think in popular culture, the arena to talk about race and masculinity, that sort of representation, is in basketball. One example is Allen Iverson, who is this really beautiful man who came out of impoverished situations. And in the 10 game, it was completely whitewashing. And this guy, with the culture of hip hop behind him, totally blew open what was acceptable in our mainstream living room. That we can assert different identities and what Michael Jordan did, which was whitewash everything, and that made everything marketable and acceptable. So what I was trying to do with this piece was just think about how Chinatown has developed. I read that it was once in danger of being moved, and in order to stay where it is now, it had to basically exoticize itself. And a lot of art, a lot of artists, Asian American artists, I think we kind of exoticize ourselves socially, artistically, and when we market our work, we are marketed in that manner as well. So I was trying to embody that. Like if Nike actually did have some sort of Asian American player, it would probably be the 8-year-old shoe or something like that. That's your question.
Don't worry about answering my questions. Whatever comes to mind. I feel like a teacher or something. Okay. 2 stars, 3 stars, 1 star. Okay, 3, since you asked again there. Okay, great. Now, Vivian, and this is a question that's going to go in between a few of you. Vivian, you made an interesting statement earlier, and this, I hope this doesn't overly challenge or what have you, but you made an interesting statement earlier about this supporting local artists. Okay, I'm not sure, and we're in Chinatown, so local can mean a lot of things. Local can mean California, it can mean San Francisco, it can mean, San Francisco, it can mean Chinatown. So I'm not sure if I'm getting a feeling of local as in Chinatown. And so it's sort of a dual question. There's one thing there's a couple of things I'm picking up here, and it's not that I disagree, but on one one hand, I hear this message of sort of empowering Chinatown. But I'm getting this also notion of, you were saying, bringing outsiders to spend money here. I'm seeing art, like, I actually really like your piece, Ken. I really liked it a lot. And everybody's, I've enjoyed it all, actually. But I'm also, let's say, even with your piece, I'm not seeing any, like, I read the piece in your window, and I was noticing, here we are in Chinatown, but it was all in English. So Vivian, if you could talk, Vivian, if you could talk about, is this really what you want? Is this really about bringing in outsiders to spend money here? Doesn't that, when we talk about art and community redevelopment, aren't we just going to get a bunch of white hippies coming here and start renting our places, renting these storefronts and pushing Chinese restaurants out or what have you? What's going on here? And talk about this art that's all in English and nothing's in Chinese, even though we're in Chinatown. It's a tough one.
Yeah, good question. I think that because this is such a new project and it's our first time partnering with CCC and Cunning Street Workshop and Intersection for the Arts, it definitely has been a really great learning experience. And I do think that we have learned many lessons that we can apply for the next time we do something like this. And I do believe that while I said, yes, we want to bring more foot traffic into Chinatown, I think the bottom line would be to continue to foster this type of creativity that's not just traditional art, but also contemporary art that come from young Asian Americans. That would be a starting point for us to develop this vernacular culture that could draw people in from outside. And the question is, I think you're trying to ask if it's going to gentrify the neighborhood. Is that what I'm trying to? Yeah. So we definitely do not have that in mind. We just really want to use art and tap into the type of creativity that we have on this panel, as well as other artists that were represented in present tense, and to continue learning. It's a process, and while we really want everybody from outside to come and spend money in Chinatown to, just really create more business for our local merchants, it's also really important to be sensitive to things that you brought up, like having bilingual signage. I think that we're going to definitely do that next time, and I just really think that the lessons that we've learned this time around can definitely be applied to next time. And I think does that answer some of your question?
4 stars. 4 stars. This is really fun. I've always wanted to be a teacher. And Elvin, what are your thoughts on this in terms of economics, art and economics, and legitimacy of the art, in a sense, coming from the community? What are your thoughts on that? Answer my question exactly.
I'm shooting for 5 stars. Well, I agree a lot with what Vivian said. I think what you do is you just make sure that the community is involved in your effort. So you're not introducing or superimposing an art program or an art presence externally on top of a neighborhood. You involve what's local. I imagine Chinatown, I can just tell from the young people here, has a rich art presence already to draw from. So I think what it entails is just highlighting the rich existing presence and celebrating that. By the way, I really have enjoyed listening to you all, and back to the original question about doctors and lawyers. This listening is quite evident that you all are historians and sociologists and professionals in your own right. So I think in addition to economic development, the first or a key type of economic development is how we invest in our people and these young people insofar as what the art what the arts have done for them as in the way of human development, I think is the number one type of capital that you hope for, and that you want to see develop in neighborhoods.
Thanks, Elvin.
I guess this is sort of a comment on your question to Vivian. Maybe it'll evolve into a question. But I was interested to hear you say why this art is in English as opposed to Chinese, and why should it have to address only the Chinese community? You have artists in the show who aren't of Chinese descent or even of Asian descent, and I guess what I'm wondering is, with the artists, do you feel like your community is, do you feel like you have to kind of limit your community to within your ethnic background, or do you feel like when you're as an artist out in the art world, you, as Ken had said, kind of commodify yourself as this Asian artist?
I think that's a great question. And I think it's a great question because it asks one of the fundamental ideas about why we're all sitting in this room together. It asks, what is community, I think? And I mean, that term is so malleable. And I think that's kind of at the heart of what we're going for with this idea of producing ideas well, I hate to be so blunt or broad to say this, but the whole democratic paradox in itself. How do you create dialogue, and how do the body politic, how does it evolve and merge? And it's not a fixed thing. I mean, I'm part Chinese. My Chinese is terrible. I'm sitting in Chinatown. When I was on the East Coast, I was the most Chinese out of the people that I was the ethnic kid, which was weird in my really white college, which was so strange to be coming back here where I'm obviously the white person in Chinatown, right? So, there's all sorts of levels of community identity. And I think that the works that we're all addressing, put forth our personal views on what it means to be in that gray area that's always shifting. That's a game you can play when you travel. Is who do I want to be, and even when you're at home, it's who do you want to, which community do you want to access, and through that way, you can, develop for each project I'm doing. It's always defining, well, what's the community here? You can define as the constituency or whatnot. So.
I think the important thing to remember is that this is one show of what will hopefully be lots of shows and lots of programming in Chinatown, outside of Chinatown. San Francisco Arts Commission is opening up storefronts in the city that are empty, that are open for artists to do. This is just one comment. I don't think that it's interesting, your question that you're posing, English versus Chinese, are both gentrification versus ghettoization, exotification. These are all things that if I could reach down to every young, identity-based artist that is 19 and wants to do a project with chopsticks, and just grab them by the hand and be these are the kind of questions that you're going to have for the rest of your life. And the gamble that we all took to be a part of a show that takes place in Chinatown, and the questions we're all going to have to answer by that choice is a hugely political one. And so it's all very exciting, and the thing is the relationship to Chinatown, even if you're not even from San Francisco, people will put this part of this town upon your identity wherever you are, as if you have some. I have lots of stories, most of you have heard a lot of the stories about my relationship to Chinatown, but if it's imposed upon you, and then I think what's empowering is that you have a right to redefine what that is in this small space for this 1 month. And hopefully there's more programming and more support for artists that they can all have that opportunity to make that one little thing. It doesn't even have to be in this place, but you could take it out. I mean, I've had the same work in different shows, and people will still come to me and ask and say, oh, Chinese people are so hardworking and meticulous. you know, it's amazing that you did that, and I'll be screaming at the top of my lungs, I was born in Utah, you know? Yeah, so I don't know, I mean, I think it was really interesting that the secondary question that you posed is that that's what's at the root of it, is we're, it's like, it's a political thing, what's happening, and it's something that I'm excited that the CCC is eagerly embraced where a lot of other institutions have not. So I think that's, you know, and Kearney Street Workshop and Kevin, everyone, they're mobilizing in a way that I think is really important for the future of all artists that want to make work.
Really quickly, there is a thing, well, this is not a new idea on how to define who we are, right? Or what the elements of being, you know, included or excluded. This is not new by any means. But there was a famous exhibition in the mid-90s, I think, in Paris, that was called, what? That was a good one, I guess. That was what I was thinking about, but thank you, Stephanie. It was called like, We're All Parisians, I think. It was only Chinese artists in Paris. And that was interesting too, because these were all, you know, artists who left China to go to Paris to seek a different life. But then now they're all Parisians, so that was like a really affront to what it meant to be French, because there's so many laws in France against, you know, how you can, in public form, you know, media. You know, you can't use certain words on the radio. Or I should rather say certain songs have to be in certain orders. You can't have too many non-French songs on the radio in the order. Anyway, so you know, these ideas are, you know, continuing.
We got a question over here.
So, as a spectator, what I boil down this all to is identity. I think you guys have spent a lot of time thinking about identity, especially as in this way you're obviously straddling two different identities, maybe more. And but thinking into the future, not just as artists, but as parents, like what types of things will you focus on in teaching your kids about identity as Asian Americans or anything else as you see yourself?
That's my husband. One of the thoughts that came to mind, I'm not even sure I'm going to answer that directly, as Justin was speaking, was how even though my work draws specifically on personal history, because that's what I have to draw on, I think the topics are much more human than that. Whether we're male or female or raised in America or another country, I think we all have some sort of connection, history, path of transformation that is connected to what it means to be a son or a daughter, or a brother or a sister, or or to have parents or a society, a nation with expectations put on you, and in that way, while I may be specifically Chinese American in the imagery or the stories that I speak to, I think the larger themes are much more human than that. And that's why it continues, I think, to have relevance beyond whether it is taking place. And I really appreciate what Emma was saying. This isn't something that is only relevant to being in Chinatown. I think context adds meaning, and certainly something else is happening because we're having this conversation in Chinatown. However, I think there's equally interesting conversations that happen when we remove this conversation into other forums. That being said, I think talking about identity is important, and one of the things that I'm grateful for is that, especially in San Francisco, this was one of the first places that and I've lived in, including Paris and many other places, that I felt as if my identity wasn't being imposed on me. I felt I actually had room to establish what that was, and that there was something more fluid about my identity here, and that my fists didn't have to be so clenched, and I didn't need to scream at the top of my lungs, saying that I'm not Japanese or something. When my family would walk into the store and people would say sayonara,
we all have these stories. And so I think that's one of the things I'm grateful about in this community in particular, the larger Bay Area community in general, why I'm so excited to be raising a family here, because I think that it's so much easier to talk about this identity in a way that is feels more natural and like it's less of a fight. And I hope that I'm seeing signs that this is going to become more and more so the case. And it wasn't too long ago that it was illegal for us to be married. I find that fascinating, and to remember that that is a part of our recent history, and to know that we've come a long way and we need to continue to move in that direction forward.
Anyone else want to talk about parenthood? Ken?
Okay, great. I wanted to tie together two different comments. Justin, you talked about dialogue, and then Elvin, you talked about that you didn't want this, or these shows shouldn't be like imposed on a community. I also want to draw on one third comment. I mean, I appreciate what you said. I mean, to experiment, to try something new, it's the best thing in the world, and it means that you're going to learn stuff. It means you're going to realize later that, oh, well, maybe we should have done it this way or that way, what have you. And so I appreciate what you said, Iman, about this is one piece. Not only one piece from each of you, but this is the one first of this kind of show. But when we go back to, Justin, you were talking about dialogue and not imposing. So I guess to the different artists, do you feel your work is creating dialogue? And let me put it in a real sort of crass sort of way, in terms of the rapping art. And I was watching, I did see some people go by this morning, and on other days kind of go by and take a look. I even saw one woman taking a picture. I was trying to run up to ask her, what did you think? And then I think she thought I was stalking her, so I backed off. But in any case, so I'm envisioning someone going up, looking at these objects wrapped in this paper, and going, I wonder what that's about. That's not a bad thing. But is there really dialogue going on there? Is the conversation that you're wanting to have really happening? So because someone looked at a wheel wrapped in that paper.
Fabric.
Fabric.
I don't know, and I don't think you ever know when you make something and put it up in a gallery. I don't know if you ever. But actually, no, I do know, because I was invited to do this panel discussion today, and this is a dialogue. So yes, the answer is absolutely. But actually, the first day when we were installing it, I left, and when I was like coming in and out, I saw these two older Chinese women, and they were just happy seeing it, and we didn't talk. But I guarantee that audience wouldn't come to any of my gallery shows. So I think, and there was no English and there was no Chinese, but there was something there, and that was probably a highlight of this whole experience, was that, I think it is it's making some difference in some lives of people who may never have considered art, and definitely not contemporary art, part of their everyday. So I think another thing is, from all the work in the show, I see this like new wave of there's a lot of humor, and what you were saying, like the human side of it. And before I emphasize the politics, I also think there's a lot of smart things happening in the show, and a lot of fun. And I think by having fun and making, maybe should I have children, that's what I would encourage, that they be able to laugh at themselves, and to, I feel like there's a really positive thing happening with all the work too. It's not all sort of didactic and angry and lectury, and you don't understand my life as an Asian American woman. I think it's funny, and I'm going for funny, for smart, and I don't know. I think that's a more productive thing that's happening with the show. But I do think there's a dialogue right now.
Thanks. Kim, you wanna? How about your work? Do you think?
Well, I think there's a dialogue.
Yeah.
I must have my water. I think, yes, there is. Just having people look at the piece and talk about. I think one thing I really wish I could have done was actually open up that storefront and sell shoes made in China, for example, which would have been really amazing. But I think for sure there's a dialogue, because when people look at this, they go like, well, I don't know, they ask what's going on here, and they do stop and think, because it blends in, it's a Chinatown shop, I think. But it also makes people stop, one, about is this art, and how's this art, but also about how things are being represented. So I think just overhearing what people say and talking to people, is this okay, is this not okay, and that sort of thing.
Thanks. We have a question emailed in from someone. This is neat, all this new technology, I've never done this before. Here's the question. Let's see, art is part of the culture, and I think in Western society, things tend to be, we've used the word thank you. Commodified and compartmentalized, and as you were saying, you go to a gallery, right? In your life, you go to the store, you buy your food, and if you want to see art, you go to the gallery and you consume art at the gallery. How do we build, the question is, how do we build a community where art is part of our culture and yet be able to support oneself or even the center? So how do we, I think that we is actually this organization, CCC and Kearney Street and the community development centers. How do we build a community where art is part of our culture? And yet, I believe the question is, and yet have the artists be able to support themselves? So maybe we'll take it one piece at a time. How do we build a community where art is part of our culture? And Vivian and Elvin, you want to take a shot at that?
I think that what CCC is doing is really wonderful. It's the cultural center for Chinese culture in Chinatown, and they've been doing a great job, promoting that side of just allowing people to get a taste of art from different artists. And with the work that CCDC is doing, we're trying to really activate public spaces like alleyways. Like I mentioned before, we had our first semi-annual Arts in the Alley, where we had numerous performers and artists that were local to the neighborhood perform all day for the Chinatown community. And because it was so community focused, it drew a really big crowd from places that where people were just stepped out of their house and they just, wow, all this commotion going on. And with that, it drew even more visitors from outside. And we did do lots of marketing to the Bay Area. And I think as we do more partnerships with each other, with the CCC, with the Chinese Historical Society, and the window storefronts actually were part of, there's the Chinese Progressive Association, Chinese for Affirmative Action, and the Asian Law Caucus. So I think the more partnerships we have and the more activities we do, that's going to just help our community incorporate art into our everyday life. And we want that to be a more regular thing. And I think we're taking the right steps towards that direction.
I think the short answer is we need to decide that we value it as a society, as a culture. Then we need to, after that, should we make that decision that yes, this is important and valuable, we need to find and bring resources to the table to make it happen. And I'll give you this very quick example. In the Tenderloin, there are about, depending on estimates, about 4,000 kids. So ideally, in the ideal world, I would love to see art programming and investing, again, as I mentioned earlier, in human development through the arts from a very, very early age. But not only kids, adults as well, senior citizens, and again, referring to the Tenderloin, we have a significant homeless population, a significant population of people who have had a difficult time with substance abuse. And I think at each stage of our lives, there is a place and a value for art to help us in terms of our development and just in terms of the spirit. And it comes down in real world matters to resources and whether we're going to find a way to make the resources available to make that happen. And so far as the second question, how artists can support themselves, I think there's a really interesting shift going on now. I'm having this ongoing dialogue with the superintendent, Carlos Garcia, about the School of the Arts here in San Francisco. And the interesting shift that I'm seeing is a more entrepreneurial approach to arts. And this is in the areas of music, media arts, journalism. I mean, if you're a writer, you're going to have to find a new way. If you have ambitions of going into print media, newspapers, for example, how are you going to survive and support yourself? And I see young people like the brilliant artists here at the table in this generation doing some really innovative, creative things that are much more entrepreneurial in nature. And I'm hoping that that's going to be a way, a source for artists to be able to make a living, so they don't get hassled so much from their parents about being doctors and lawyers.
I don't know if you get.
And I think also something I want to say to that is that you don't know where things are going. And I think that one of the ways that society is structured, the way that you tell us, but well, as you grow up, you're told you have to do things that lead to certain things, quantifiable. And the arts are really hard to quantify the impact and the outcome. And so, as someone who makes art, as an artist, it's slow. You don't know where it's going. But, if you guide it right, hopefully it'll go to that right place. So I think that, these kind of partnerships are key because it's organic. It develops, places develop to support it. You grow a buzz, the word spreads, and you get support for it. And pretty soon you have, new programs, and it's like a feedback loop. So one of the interesting things is that feedback loop doesn't take hold until you reach that critical mass. And I think that in all the communities, you've got to reach that critical mass. And what Abby's doing here, which is so wonderful, is try to build a group. I mean, I'm going to come back next time there's this show in 2 years, definitely try to help out if I can or whatever. And so, as the ball rolls, you gotta keep up with it and help guide it along. So, thanks.
I just want to further comment upon what you said. I mean, number one is you've got to place a value to it, but it's kind of the next logical step, understanding the necessity for arts and culture in life. Quick anecdote, I recently did another project last year looking at the California prison system, kind of how pervasive it is and just the whole prison industrial complex. And I featured work from artists who are on the outside as well as artwork from the inside. From that experience, I actually got to go up into San Quentin probably like 6 times and interacted